I'm an organizer for Refuse Fascism and a new member of Rev Club. I'm also a part-time animal activist, and I've brought forward the case to both fellow comrades and people in Refuse Fascism, but also animal activists, fellow animal activists. I brought forward the case that this fascist forces are attacking animal activists, and they are attacking non-human animals and the natural environment itself, but also the system more broadly in general as well. And I just wanted to, in light of that, I wanted to bring up the question, do you think that we need to struggle for the liberation of all sentient animals that are being enslaved, raped, tortured, and murdered by the billions each year as part of animal agriculture, cosmetic testing, leather, fur, and down-based clothes under this system? And unfortunately, even the abuse of torture, murder of household domestic animals also occurs under the system. And if you agree with that, if so, do you think said liberation is possible to be resolved under this system, like i.e. compassionate or vegan capitalism, that we can like somehow eat our way to a better world for non-human animals, or does that require concurrent struggle for animal liberation along with a broader revolution to get out of the system? I know it's a big, encompassing question, so yeah.
Yes, it is. Well, look, I think there are different levels to that. The evolution of human species and human society involved, domesticating animals, which involved killing animals for food, and for clothing. Most of the Native American cultures, for example, when societies did that, they had a certain orientation toward it, which often they would say something to the animal that they killed, explaining what the necessity was. And this is the way human society evolved, and it has evolved now to where these things have become massive, mass production industries. And I feel that the question, needs more thought. But I will say this: there are certain things that are completely gratuitous in terms of the treatment of other, sentient beings, and with varying levels of consciousness. And we're learning constantly more about what levels of consciousness different, animal species do have. So there's a whole category of gratuitous things which should be eliminated. Then there's a question of a transition. I mean, look, there are a lot of different levels. There's human health, what's healthy for human beings. There's human necessity, what is necessary for human survival. Is it the same as it was, say, 1 million years ago when human beings were just first evolving, or 20,000 years, or 40,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago? No. But you have a whole, built-up structure in which human society functions by interacting with animals in the way the other species, in the way you're talking about. So, I think that there are a lot of big questions in terms of transitioning to a whole different system, and then the consideration there would be, what is good for human health, and what is good for human interaction with the environment, and what is good for interaction with other species. I could say, well, look, I could be all things to all people and say, well, I just think we should just stop mistreating animals. But I will say honestly, I think the question is more complicated than that, and it's going to require, sorting through a lot of contradictions. Things that are, like I said, gratuitous things that are done, especially to species with more developed nervous systems and so on. I think that is relatively more straightforward. That but there's a whole about what shouldn't be done. But there's a whole thing about medicine. You can't experiment certain medical treatments on human beings. That's been a determination made by society. So then what do you do? There are a lot of things that are evolving where you can do simulated things that you don't have to actually involve other living beings. So, I'm not trying to dodge your question, but I'm also don't want to give a cheap answer that just says yes, I agree with you, and let's stop mistreating other animals. I think that there's a lot of complexity there. I think the gratuitous things that should be eliminated, and I think human society should evolve to where it does nothing to other species that cause harm to them that isn't absolutely necessary. Whether some things are necessary or not for the survival and development of the human species to be honest, is a question I'm not willing to say. I'm not willing to say that there's an absolute no to that. So and the concept, for example, of animal liberation. Well, that's a complex question too, because there are some species that have basically, they're alive, but they don't even have essentially a nervous system, let alone a highly developed one. That's different than a species that has a highly developed nervous system and a fairly high level of consciousness about which we're continuing to learn more. So that's another contradiction I think would actually have to be taken into account. So I don't have a ready-made answer for that, I'll be honest. I do think that the argument of people, like yourself, the arguments should be listened to. I do think we need to engage those questions and not dismiss them as trivial. But I don't think there's an easy answer to it, and I'm not, maybe that sounds like a cop-out, but I do not feel that, I feel I'd be dishonest if I just said, yes, let's stop mistreating all animals, and here's an easy answer to it. But so that's what I can say about that at this point. But I do think, as I said, we should get rid of the gratuitous things, and we should continue to discuss and struggle over this. I think there are a lot of complex questions, and we should seriously engage them.